First I heard about it really was when I was in the legislature. Of course, alcohol, a huge problem, not just in rural Alaska, but all over Alaska. And this particular baby that I saw was 16 months old. It was 8 pounds, which is about a third of what the baby should have been at that point. It was, had a ventilator in its mouth and also a feeding tube. The child's body would convulse, but no sound would come out. And it was very sensitive, I was told by the nurses, to any outside stimulus, to touch, unlike a child, a normal child that may be soothed by touch or by holding. The baby had bandages so that the light was less intense on the baby. And I can remember touching the baby, and of course it pulled back, but its skin was kind of a leathery feel almost, and wrinkled, and it just broke my heart to look at that baby and to think that we as a society somehow allowed this to happen. And when I'd spoken with the nurses there, they indicated that nobody had come to visit this baby in the 16 months that it was there. The mother had 2 or 3 other children, previous children with fetal alcohol syndrome, and she was pregnant again and drinking. And it struck me that we just had to have some mechanism. We couldn't stand by and watch things like that happen. And that really prompted me to introduce a series of bills and initiatives on fetal alcohol syndrome, but particularly one that was very controversial was one that would have dealt with a situation like that would have allowed for the court system in a case like that, after much extensive review and checks and balances, to involuntarily commit a person that was harming the fetus to a treatment program. It was very controversial. I didn't think it would be controversial. Of course, my intentions were only to do what I explained, to try and protect the unborn child to what is otherwise a life sentence of misery, let alone the financial costs and burdens to the state and to society. But it got wrapped up in the fact that opponents who were supportive of women's reproductive rights felt that this would be giving standing or status to the fetus or the unborn child, and that would be a slippery slope towards the issue of abortion and potentially could weaken the abortion laws that we had. And so there was opposition to it. There was criticism of me for trying to do that, and I wasn't successful in getting that piece of legislation passed. I had many different, I think I had probably 8 or 10 at least different initiatives, bills, resolutions, funding proposals within the budget, many different aspects to try and have a comprehensive approach to attack the issue from a lot of different perspectives, primarily in education and prevention. At that time, there really weren't good statistics, and so I worked with the Legislative Research Agency to come up with what the costs were for each fetal alcohol syndrome child. And at that time, I believe it was $1.3 to $1.4 million per child that it was costing the state of Alaska. If we could do preventative education, preventative work, provide treatment options for women who are pregnant, encourage them to get treatment, if necessary, require treatment, that it would be a huge economic savings to the state. And that sometimes resonated more with legislators when I appealed to them than did some of the human side, which there's so many issues that you deal with there. It's hard, it would be hard for people to understand the experiences that I had without having had those themselves. And so if I put it in fiscal terms, many times they could understand it better. I introduced the legislation to make a requirement any place that alcohol is sold or dispensed to have a sign that warns people about the harm in drinking while you're pregnant. And you'll see it in any bar, any liquor store, any establishment that sells or dispenses liquor today. And it used to be when I started on this journey, doctors were saying 1 drink a day when you're pregnant is just fine. Sometimes that's good to relax you during your pregnancy, and it's helpful. And I think we've turned that around over time, where people really understand that any amount of alcohol during pregnancy can make a difference in the child's development. Overall, it was even through the introduction of each of these bills or resolutions, every time it had a committee hearing, every time I could get a story in the newspaper, a story on the radio, write an opinion piece on it, send a newsletter out to my constituents, it broadened the education and knowledge base of Alaskans. And so just by virtue of talking about it, it helped educate people about it. The image is still very vivid of that child. It's haunting, really, to think of the child and to see that vision and see the suffering that child had needlessly for 4 or 5 short years in the hospital. No visitors, no relatives. It's a human tragedy.